Have you ever wondered what it feels like when the universe places you precisely where you need to be, wrapping a routine, exhaustingly long day in the warm, cinematic promise of a fairy tale, only to reveal months later that you walk straight into an elaborate, meticulously constructed web of calculated lies? Imagine a crisp, rain-swept Friday evening inside the bustling international arrivals terminal of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Outside, heavy sheets of autumn rain streak aggressively across the massive floor-to-ceiling glass windows, blurring the glowing runway lights into shimmering streaks of gold and crimson. Inside, the terminal hums with the chaotic, relentless energy of hurried travelers dragging heavy luggage, crying children, and echoing flight announcements bouncing off the concrete pillars. Amidst this rushing, indifferent crowd stands a young woman, her fingers loosely yet protectively wrapped around the handle of a heavy leather portfolio case. Her name is Nicole. She is an internationally recognized structural engineer and architectural consultant who spends her life flying between major global project sites, designing sustainable corporate headquarters and high-rise commercial structures. Nicole is sharp, brilliantly analytical, and completely dedicated to her craft. But beneath her polished professional exterior lies a warm, deeply romantic heart that has always yearned for a genuine, unshakable human connection. Someone who could love her for who she is beneath the blueprints. And then, a sudden clumsy collision shatters the routine rhythm of the evening. Someone rushing past her clips her portfolio case, sending a dozen architectural blueprints, sketches, and financial layout sheets spilling across the slippery polished linoleum floor. As Nicole drops instantly to her knees to gather them before they get trampled by the rushing masses, a hand reaches down right beside hers, scooping up the scattered pages with swift, elegant efficiency. When Nicole looks up to take the papers, time seems to completely miraculously freeze. Julian Vance. He was striking, possessing an effortless, sophisticated charm, wearing a tailored charcoal travel blazer, silver-flecked dark hair neatly styled at his temples, and a disarming, breathtaking smile that instantly made the ambient noise of the crowded airport fade away into absolute silence. He wasn't just handsome in a conventional sense, he projected an undeniable magnetism, an aura of old-money confidence and international corporate sophistication. Julian helped her gracefully to her feet, holding her blueprints as if they were priceless works of art rather than rough architectural drafts. He introduced himself as an independent venture capitalist and international tech consultant, constantly flying between North America and Europe to finance green energy startups and sustainable infrastructure. What started as a chance apology at a baggage carousel turned into an intense 3-hour conversation at an exclusive airport VIP lounge as their respective connecting flights were indefinitely delayed. That single fateful rain-drenched evening set off a whirlwind, cinematic romance that swept Nicole entirely off her feet and blinded her to every practical warning sign. Julian was attentive, fiercely romantic, and deeply invested in her personal ambitions. He showered her with spontaneous weekend getaways to secluded mountain cabins in the Cascades, whispered poetic promises of a shared future under starry skies, and made her feel like she was the absolute, undisputed center of his universe. He listened to her professional achievements with shining eyes, validating every hard-earned victory in a male-dominated corporate world that usually treated her as a background figure. Just 4 months after that rainy night in the airport terminal, Julian took her to a private candlelit terrace overlooking the glittering Seattle waterfront at midnight, dropped smoothly to one knee, and proposed with an exquisite vintage diamond ring that sparkled like liquid ice under the autumn moonlight. Nicole didn't hesitate for a single second. She threw her arms around his neck, whispering a tearful, absolute, unconditional yes. They were married 3 months later in a quiet, breathtaking coastal ceremony, surrounded by close friends and colleagues. Nicole felt like the luckiest, happiest woman alive, believing she had found her forever anchor. To support Julian's expansive international tech expansion projects, which he claimed required heavy initial liquidity and bridging capital across multiple international jurisdictions, Nicole didn't think twice about legally merging a massive portion of her substantial personal savings, inheritance, and real estate equity into their joint corporate accounts, giving him full, unmonitored signing authority over her secondary business funds. She trusted him with her heart, her family name, and her financial independence. She just had no idea that Julian wasn't commuting between states for venture capital at all. He was commuting between two entirely separate, parallel domestic lives. And she was simply funding his lavish European empire while he played the devoted family man across the ocean. For the first year and a half of their marriage, Julian played the role of the devoted, attentive husband with terrifying, flawless consistency. He balanced his frequent international trips, mostly to London and Zurich, as he explicitly claimed, with intense, passionate homecomings, filled with imported gifts, grand romantic gestures, and endless poetic promises of a permanent, settled future, together once his global tech portfolio matured. Nicole, deeply immersed in managing her multi-million-dollar architectural engineering projects, trusted him completely and unconditionally. She managed her design firm while Julian handled their joint financial portfolio, moving capital seamlessly across international wire channels to fund what she genuinely believed were high-yield tech startups, green energy infrastructure, and sustainable real estate ventures overseas. However, as the months rolled on, subtle, deeply unsettling anomalies began to surface in the smooth fabric of their daily domestic life. It started with small, careless logistical slips. Julian would occasionally answer encrypted phone calls in the middle of the night, speaking in a fluid, fluent foreign language with a tone of quiet, domestic familiarity that vanished instantly the second he noticed Nicole was awake in the dark. Whenever she asked casually about his overseas venture returns or requested copies of the international tax filings for their joint accounts, Julian would smoothly wave her off with a charming, patronizing smile that didn't reach his eyes. "My brilliant love," he would whisper, kissing her forehead with practiced mechanical tenderness. "You build physical structures that stand for centuries against earthquakes, but international finance is a messy labyrinth of offshore regulations, tax shelters, and privacy laws. Don't burden your sharp, creative mind with wire transfers and corporate compliance. Let me handle the heavy financial lifting so you can focus entirely on your art." Nicole, blinded by love, exhaustion, and her absolute trust in his integrity, swallowed the uneasy knot in her throat every single time and let it go. Until the rainy Tuesday afternoon in May that shattered her reality forever and exposed the monstrous architecture of his lies. Julian was away on a scheduled 3-day venture capital summit in London. Nicole had finished an engineering site inspection early and decided to drop off a rare architectural manuscript at Julian's private downtown corporate office. When she walked into the executive suite, his personal assistant was out to lunch. But Julian's high-security desktop computer was left unlocked, glowing brightly on the mahogany desk. A high-definition video conferencing and cloud storage portal was paused mid-frame, displaying an open directory of financial logs, legal documents, and family photo albums. Curiosity mixing with a sudden, icy premonition in her chest, Nicole stepped closer to the screen. Her eyes scanned the open tabs, and the blood instantly drained from her face, leaving her completely paralyzed. There were financial ledgers, European property deeds, and family photographs. Not old photographs from his past, current ones, dated from last week. Julian smiling brightly holding a laughing toddler in a sunlit European garden filled with blooming roses. Julian, standing arm in arm with an elegant, sophisticated woman outside a sprawling, luxurious suburban estate in the south of France. Her name was Claire. And according to the legal marriage certificates, property titles, and family registries open on the screen, Claire wasn't a business associate, a colleague, or an ex-wife. She was his primary legal wife of 8 years, and the mother of his 2 children. Worse still, Nicole's sharp forensic eye traced the wire transfers flowing from her own personal business accounts and joint assets over the past 2 years. Millions of dollars, her hard-earned savings, inheritance, design fees, and real estate equity, had been systematically funneled through complex shell companies directly into Julian's French and Swiss bank accounts, entirely funding Claire's lavish European lifestyle, their children's elite private schooling, and Julian's sprawling overseas properties. She wasn't a partner in his life, nor was she helping a visionary entrepreneur. She was his primary financial sponsor, an exploited, unsuspecting cash cow funding his real family across the Atlantic while he played the adoring newlywed in Seattle. For 3 agonizing minutes, absolute deafening silence filled the office. There were no tears, no screams of rage, no shaking hands. The raw, searing heat of the betrayal burned so intensely and so fast that it instantly cauterized every vulnerable emotion within her, replacing it with a cold, razor-sharp, calculated fury. You wanted to use me as your personal ATM to bankroll your real life? Nicole thought, her eyes narrowing as a dangerous ice-cold smile touched her lips. I'll show you how a structural engineer dismantles a poorly built foundation from the inside out. Quietly, silently, Nicole plugged a high-speed encrypted flash drive into the USB port, downloading every single bank record, wire confirmation, international property deed, tax document, and communication log before closing the files and wiping her digital footprint. She didn't call him. She didn't scream over the phone. Instead, using her international corporate contacts, she tracked down the one person in the world who hated Julian Vance even more than she did. Claire, his first wife in France. A single encrypted email with the subject line, "Your husband's other life in Seattle," changed everything. Within 48 hours of receiving Nicole's encrypted email and the devastating digital evidence folder, Claire Vance did something Julian never could have anticipated in his wildest nightmares. She responded immediately. A secure, encrypted video call connected Nicole's high-rise Seattle office with a sunlit, elegant private study in the south of France. On the high-definition screen appeared Claire, a brilliant corporate tax lawyer and mother of 2 who had spent the last 2 years suspecting her husband's mysterious, recurring North American business trips, but had lacked the definitive forensic proof and international legal access required to expose him. When Claire opened the digital folder and saw the wire transfer logs proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that her family's luxury estate, private school tuitions, and lavish European lifestyle were being sustained by the stolen life savings, inheritance, and architectural earnings of another innocent, hard-working woman, any lingering hesitation vanished from her eyes. A cold, terrifying fury replaced it. "He thought he was invincible, didn't he?" Claire said, her voice steady, chillingly calm, and dripping with an absolute shared vengeance. "He played us both like pawns, dividing his time, his fabricated lies, and our money between 2 continents. But he forgot one fundamental, fatal rule, Nicole. A structural engineer knows precisely how a towering building collapses under hidden structural stress, and a senior corporate tax lawyer knows exactly how to lock every single exit door from the inside." For the next 10 intense days, operating across 2 continents in absolute clockwork secrecy, the 2 women formed an unstoppable, devastating alliance. While Julian continued his dual life, sending affectionate, poetic morning texts to Nicole in Seattle while spending his evenings dining with Claire in France, completely oblivious to the gathering storm, Nicole and Claire worked around the clock with international financial forensic investigators and cross-border legal teams. They mapped every single offshore shell company, tracked every illegal wire transfer down to the cent, and unmasked the multi-layered asset shielding network Julian had spent years constructing. They discovered that Julian was planning one final catastrophic move, liquidating all remaining joint assets, property equities, and business accounts across North America and Europe into a single untraceable cryptocurrency holding account before permanently abandoning them both to start a new cycle elsewhere. The execution window was razor thin. They had to strike precisely when Julian initiated his final multi-million-dollar digital transfer, freezing his accounts in both countries simultaneously before he could board a flight to a non-extradition jurisdiction. Working hand-in-hand with federal banking regulators in the United States and high court magistrates in Paris and Zurich, Nicole and Claire secured emergency international asset freezing injunctions, asset forfeiture orders, and criminal warrants for wire fraud, identity deception, bigamy, and grand larceny. Everything was locked in place, synchronized down to the exact second. The trap was set for a Friday afternoon, right during Julian's scheduled international executive board meeting at a luxury downtown hotel in Seattle, where he planned to execute his final digital escape. The grand glass-walled executive lounge of downtown Seattle's most exclusive corporate hotel hummed with quiet, elite luxury. Outside, the autumn rain beat heavily against the panoramic windows overlooking the bay, while inside, wealthy investors, tech executives, and international consultants mingled over drinks, completely unaware of the drama unfolding beneath the surface. At the center of a VIP corner booth sat Julian Vance, dressed in an immaculate bespoke navy suit, a platinum watch gleaming on his wrist. He looked every bit the triumphant international entrepreneur. With a confident, arrogant smile, he tapped open the high-security banking portal on his sleek Ultrabook, preparing to authorize the final, multi-million-dollar wire transfer that would liquidate his joint assets across North America and Europe into a secure offshore cryptocurrency holding account. His phone buzzed with an affectionate text message from Nicole in Seattle, wishing him luck on his big financial meeting, while an automated email notification from Claire in France confirmed she was managing the family estate. Julian chuckled softly to himself, basking in the sheer brilliance of his dual deception. He believed he was entirely untouchable, a master manipulator who had outsmarted everyone, or so he thought. The heavy mahogany double doors of the executive lounge swung open with a sharp, echoing snap that cut through the ambient conversation. Julian didn't look up immediately, assuming it was just another late-arriving investor or hotel staff. But when the ambient chatter in the room suddenly died away into a heavy, suffocating silence, a cold premonition prickled down his spine. He raised his eyes. Walking deliberately down the center of the lounge was Nicole. She wore a sharp-tailored charcoal pantsuit that radiated absolute authority, her expression cold, composed, and razor-sharp. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her on either side were two federal marshals in dark suits, holding official digital asset seizure warrants and court seals. And walking right beside Nicole, stepping out from the private elevator alcove with an icy, statuesque elegance, was Claire, having flown in overnight from Paris on a private international warrant detail. Julian's face drained of every drop of color in a single microsecond, turning a sickly, ghostly gray. The blood rushed from his head as his hands froze motionless over the laptop keyboard, his fingers hovering over the transfer confirmation button. Julian? A wealthy investor nearby stammered, stepping back in shock and disgust. Julian leaped up from the booth, knocking over his crystal glass as his voice cracked with sheer, unadulterated panic. "Nicole! Claire! What is this? Security? Remove them? This is a private." Nicole didn't flinch. She stepped right up to the edge of his table, her voice ringing with crystal clear, razor-sharp precision across the entire silent lounge. "There is no security coming to save you, Julian. The game is over." She reached out and slammed the lid of his laptop shut with a decisive, echoing thud, cutting off his open wire transfer portal forever. Claire stepped forward beside Nicole, her eyes blazing with cold, justified fury. "Surprise, darling," Claire said smoothly, her French accent cutting through the room like a scalpel. "Your European family sends their regards, and so do the international prosecutors." Before Julian could utter another frantic syllable of defense, the lead federal marshal stepped up, grabbing Julian firmly by the shoulders. The cold, metallic click of steel handcuffs echoed loudly through the quiet room as they snapped securely around his wrists, pinning his arms behind his back. "Julian Vance," the federal marshal announced in a booming, authoritative voice, "you are under arrest for international wire fraud, financial identity deception, bigamy, and grand larceny across multiple jurisdictions." The flashbulbs of federal investigators and media contacts waiting at the entrance erupted in a blinding wall of white light, capturing every single humiliating microsecond of his absolute public destruction. Julian's legs buckled beneath him, his bespoke suit rumpled as the marshals dragged him backward across the plush carpet toward the elevators. His multi-million-dollar empire, built on lies and stolen lives, had vanished into thin air in less than 30 seconds. Nicole and Claire stood side by side, watching the doors close behind him. They didn't smile with triumphant glee. They looked at each other with a profound, quiet understanding of two women who had reclaimed their lives, their dignity, and their futures. Without a word, they turned and walked out of the lounge together, into the bright, clean air, free, victorious, and completely vindicated.